Today we are going to be taking a look inside the new Pentax 17. First thing we're going to have to do, of course, is remove the battery. So, remove our little CR2 battery. Let's start by removing these decorative looking screws. Let's see, we've got the 4 decorative screws off. There are more screws to remove, however. Left side screw. So let's next go ahead and remove these 4. Well, let's start with the 2. And let's remove all the bottom plate screws. Okay, we can now remove the bottom plate, and I've never seen what's under here before. Wow. Why don't we go ahead and look at what that does when we wind the film. Yeah, that's it. So here is the shutter release. It's pretty cool. So before we go further, let's carefully take that off. I'll poke around to see if anything else is gonna fall off if we turn this upside down. Just watch. Let's put the camera in bulb mode so that we can hold the shutter open. That's interesting. So the shutter just opens on its own, and then the mechanism releases. That's very interesting. Okay, so I think that solenoid, it's actually not for the shutter. I think the shutter is sort of internally triggered, and all this solenoid does is push out the lever that causes this to free up, and that lets us turn the film advance again. So the release, the loud click you hear after the shutter goes off, is this solenoid pushing the clockwork that moves this catch. So we have a very small compact camera shutter that is not actually driven by this solenoid. So that's pretty interesting. It's this hybrid of a sort of fully electronic shutter and a fully mechanical film advance. And let's get back to the top plate and see if we can remove that. We're gonna have to take the rewind knob off, and fortunately that appears like it'll be pretty easy. So we do need to remove the screw after all. Great, there we go. Oh boy, okay, well, interesting design. So this comes out the bottom, and this stays on the top. And it clicks in very easily. So I actually love this design. It means that, well, on other cameras with these rewind knobs, if the bottom part falls out, you're kind of screwed. You can't easily put it back in. Pentax has designed this so that it fits in really nicely and easily, and you can very easily get it back in. That's fantastic. This alone is making me think that Pentax has really thought about the serviceability of this camera. It's pretty cool. I'm really happy to see that. So now, yeah, the whole left side of the top plate is free, but we're not into it yet. I think we're gonna have to remove the wind knob next. So the way we remove the advance lever is actually simply to remove this screw down here. Comes right off like that. And so we need to remove this screw, and this screw actually is reverse threaded. So we turn to the right, and that loosens nicely. And we can remove the advance lever. And next we've got a retaining ring. So we'll take out our spanner. And that is just a normal thread. So now that that's broken, we don't need to use any force. And this retaining ring is probably what is keeping the top plate on. So now we get to see, finally, what is under the top plate. But first, quite a few connections between the top plate and the rest of the camera, which is not too surprising. So let's kind of inspect that. We have a flex, and we have 4 wires. Well, we can kind of get a view like this. So that's a lot of fun. Oh, there's a connector. I love this. There's actually a flex PCB connector here, which you would never see on a camera designed in the 80s, so that's pretty awesome. So with some care and the right tool, we can, well, there it goes. Pop that off. So now at least the flex will not be under any stress anymore. And then we have these cables on this side covered with a little bit of Kapton. And they all go up here to the flash, of course. That's the flash. And so these might actually still have some charge. It's nice they put the Kapton here to protect you. You wouldn't want to touch these. They could shock you. We might be able to just remove the flash module, actually. I think there are just these 2 screws here. Yeah, okay. Looks like we can actually free up the flash module. And again, taking care not to touch any contacts here, hopefully. We can just safely remove that. Whoops, that's the other screw. And there it is. Good. So we have the 2 screws from the flash module and the flash module, which remains attached. Then we have the underside of the top plate. So let's look at the top plate. I think all of the controls here, so the on-off, the mode dial, the exposure compensation, and the ISO dial are all ending up on this little flex guy that plugs into that connector on the camera body. Let's take a closer look at the body as well. We've got mounting, well, screws of some kind here for the viewfinder. The viewfinder is on, it looks like plastic struts connecting to the body. Ooh. Oh, that's cool. So we have these fingers that move. Very simple, robust way to do that. There are 4 fingers here and sort of a binary coding with these 4 strips of metal that will tell the camera digitally where to set the focus point. So the focus points here are completely discrete. There's no in-between focusing. You're either in one state or another. Let's pop off the viewfinder. The viewfinder is probably also going to have a connector because of the LEDs. Though actually, oh, that's nice. The LEDs are part of the top plate, which makes the viewfinder nice and modular. So that pops right off. So, you know, so far it's nice to see Pentax was clearly thinking about sort of repairability and modularity, at least so far. It hasn't been, whoops, spacers on the bottom, of course. Let's see if there's any flash. voltage happening right now. Ooh, hello. Yep, 150 volts. Really like to drain that before we proceed further. Okay, now we've got a little capacitor draining tool that we can use to safely drain the rest of this capacitor so we can see the voltage drop. And we want to get that ideally to 0. At this point, 3 volts, everything is safe to touch, and it'll take progressively longer and longer to get lower. We're below 400 millivolts. Safe to touch, only because we just did that, measured the voltage, drained it, so there's no more stored energy, and the battery, of course, is out. So now we're free to continue. So we've got the film advance knob over here, which has some really beautiful metal gearing. This was built to last. The flash capacitor sits right below this circuit board. These flex PCBs are taking signals around the camera. These are all the control signals from the top plate. It looks like a bunch of them run to a PCB over here, which we might pop out and take a look at. And then the flash circuitry over here, and this is just the mounting point for the ISO dial. So I guess if we want to just continue taking apart the camera, we can this is just a plastic part. And this includes the spring. And there's also a ring here that I guess sits below. This is the lever that pulling up on it opens the door. So it's time to look under the leatherette here and see whether there are hidden screws that could allow us to remove this whole kind of front plate, because it looks like it wants to come off this way. So I'm going to try to remove the leatherette very carefully. It's so strange doing work on a brand new camera like this, kind of made in the same way but with fresh adhesive and soft leather. Okay, immediately. Yep, there are screws. Well, there's 1, 2. Oops, and so kind of a washer thing for this. No idea what that is. But let's remove these 2. Also going to remove the bottom plate because it may be retaining the front plate. What is retaining the front plate is the tripod socket mount. So we're going to remove that. So here is the tripod socket and the 4 screws for that. Yep, there's good movement on the front plate now, but we are going to have to remove the leatherette on the other side. Adhesive is definitely strong enough, but not too strong to prevent us from removing it without tearing the leatherette, which is really awesome. We've got more screws here. More sort of weird washer things coming off here. Removing the chrome screw on the front and these 2 on the side. And we are about to reveal, ooh, the bottom screw is longer than the top. And now, with any luck, I would hope that we could remove the front plate. I'm going to open up the door, see if that frees anything up. These two screws are also retaining that plate, or perhaps just this big one. I'll do the other one just for good measure. I feel like that might have been it. That one was kind of long. So we have this film canister retaining clip now. We can put off to the side. And here we go. Front plate comes right off, beautiful. Just one injection molded part. That's what it looks like to me. And the guts. Wow. The whole computer running the show. Of course, this is a digital film camera, that's no surprise. Wow. We've got a beautiful printed circuit board with a bunch of integrated circuits and a bunch of these sort of, I guess these kind of ZIF connectors for flexible PCBs, which is just, you know, a real pleasure to see inside a film camera. It's just such an interesting hybrid device. And, you know, it really speaks to the engineering effort that Pentax put into the camera. This is not just a disposable camera. It's a beautiful hybrid of the digital over here and the analog and the mechanical with the manual film advance here. Sitting in here, I believe this is the flash capacitor charging circuit board. That these screws here, 1, 2, and 3, 4, are holding in the entire lens barrel. So why don't we try to remove those and see if we can access that. Ah, yep, there we go. I think we can just remove those connectors, and those will also come right out. Yeah, there we go. It comes right off. Okay. I would guess that this is the light meter diode, if I had to guess. It's quite interesting to see the lens is sort of floating here on these little posts. You can kind of see daylight all the way through there. I'm happy to see that Pentax has kind of stuck to the traditional manufacturing design of cameras from this era. It's all screws and a little bit of tape, and so far it's actually better than I'm used to because we've been able to get pretty far without doing any soldering. There's no heavy use of glue. It's honestly, so yeah, it's a lot easier to take apart than a lot of the other mechanical cameras from decades ago, which is really, really cool to see. I mean, we've already freed up, do a survey. We've freed up battery compartment, the rewind knob, the advance lever, the viewfinder, tripod socket, more pieces of the rewind knob and its sort of retainer, and the entire top plate as well. And the other components in the top plate are all easily accessible, as is the flash. So it's clear that Pentax has designed this camera with repairability in mind while still keeping it pretty compact. And now it's time to put it all back together. So that was a look inside the Pentax 17, the brand new film camera from Pentax. I think this is a very interesting, well-built camera and I'm excited to see where Pentax goes from here. So if you made it here, thanks for watching. And if you've got any thoughts or questions, please head down to the comment section. I'd love to know what you think. Happy shooting!